Okay, let's get going. So the first pairing we are going to look at is Ozymandias and My Last Duchess. Okay, I always think Ozymandias is a great one, isn't it, to revise for power because it links to so many. People are concerned about My Last Duchess. Let's have a look at it. Now, what kind of question might you be asked for a pairing on these two? Remember, you'll be given one. So say if the one that's printed on the paper is My Last Duchess, and then you'll need to make a very quick decision. Which one am I going to compare it to? And imagine that you have decided on Ozymandias. Okay, so you've got My Last Duchess, Ozymandias in your mind, and you're like, this is how I'm going to, you know, answer this question about the power of man or how man controls. That's where I'm thinking. When I look at power of man, I think like humankind, mankind. I think, how do humans control? How do humans abuse their power? How do humans manipulate? How do humans, believe that they are all powerful? So the first thing, and a lot of you will have done this with me before, the first thing that I would do in an exam is I'd come up with three ideas, and I will show you what this looks like in a moment, but I'd come up with three ideas, big ideas, that connect these two poems. So I'm looking at Ozymandias on one side, My Last Duchess on the other side. I know I need to write about power, but what do both of these poems do? What do both of these poems explore? What do both of these poems look into? The big ideas. That's the first thing I do, and this would become my thesis eventually. So take a moment, take a breath, and come up with three things that link these two poems together. I'm going to show you, but maybe a bit later on, you can start thinking about the ideas that connect poems together. And there is no wrong answer here. Okay, this is just my thoughts. When I look at these two poems, I think that both poems explore rulers who feel superior to them, or sorry, who feel superior to those around them. So my first idea that I'm going to explore in my essay is both Ozymandias and My Last Duchess explore rulers or present rulers who feel superior to those around them. I can argue that. Ozymandias thinks he's better than everyone. The Duke thinks he's better than his wife and everybody else. Then I think of the next point that I might make. The next point I could make is that, as well as presenting their superiority, as well as presenting the Duke and Ozymandias as feeling superior, both poets also present rulers who are arrogant. So my first point is about superiority. My second point is about arrogance. Very similar. But I think back to like Ozymandias erecting this statue, you know, trying to prove how brilliant he truly is. I think of the Duke who, believes that he is better than everybody and will just continue in that cycle. He's setting up his marriage to his new wife, and he'll just treat her in exactly the same way as his last Duchess. So that will be my second point in my essay. My third point in my essay, what else could I explore? Well, I'd look at both poems again and I'd look at the question, make sure that I'm answering that question. Both poems explore man's power. They certainly do. So both poems explore man's power. But while Ozymandias has lost his power at the end, I'm thinking, when nature takes over, Ozymandias loses his power at the end. The Duke holds on to his. He is going to go into this cycle of power at the end. So I sit there first in the exam and I think, what are the three ideas that connect these poems? They might do it in different ways. Of course, they'll do it in different ways, but there are things that connect them, things that I always think of it as a Venn diagram, things that bring them together, and then I can look at poem A and poem B. These 3 points will then become my thesis statement. So imagine writing that first, your introduction first, looking at the question, the power of man. I would begin with both Ozymandias and My Last Duchess explore rulers who feel superior to those around them. As well as presenting their feelings of superiority, both poets also present rulers who are arrogant. And finally, both poems explore man's power. But while Ozymandias has lost his power, the Duke retains his. Boom, mic drop, I've done it. Okay, that is going to be my first 3 lines, my introduction. Once I've done that, then I break each one of these down. So my second paragraph will be both Ozymandias and My Last Duchess explore rulers who feel superior. Then I need some quotations. Then I need some analysis. Then I need to talk about the methods. So if you're note taking with me, I would start to note take like this. So I'm going to use the same structure for every pairing today. I would leave some room underneath each statement so that I can talk about Ozymandias, talk about My Last Duchess on either side. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I'm going to go with the first statement, rulers who feel superior, what might I talk about in Ozymandias? So I could talk about the sneer of cold command on the statue. Remember, Ozymandias is that statue in the desert. He believed he would live forever in people's, hearts and minds, that he is far superior than any other king that ever lived. So I could certainly talk about the sneer of cold command. The fact that when the traveler looks more closely at that statue, it tells him a lot about the type of ruler Ozymandias was. And Shelley, our poet, is using cutting alliteration. The sneer of cold command. It's a very harsh sound, showing that, he was a harsh ruler. The word sneer, I could zoom in on that and talk about how, Ozymandias looked down on everybody. Linking back to my point, he felt superior to those around him. He felt that he was better than everybody. And this was how he treated his subjects, how he treated his community when he was alive. And that is kind of immortalized in that statue. Now, I would also consider the fact that this statue was built and the sculptor would have had to create this statue. He put the sneer of cold command on the face of the statue. So I think he's even hated by the sculptor. It's not like a positive view of Ozymandias. What else could I say? I could say about this quotation that shows that he is heartless, that he's unfeeling, or that he was unfeeling, I suppose. That he looked down on his subjects. And then I'd need to connect that to My Last Duchess. Well, how would I compare or contrast a sneer of cold command to My Last Duchess? Well, I think of the Duke, and I think of the fact that he speaks in dramatic monologue. The whole poem is just his voice. He's there with a messenger who he's setting up his new marriage to a new woman, and he is certainly dominating the conversation. He is the only one that speaks in this poem. And he speaks about his former wife. He speaks about his last duchess. And he firmly states, I choose never to stoop. He will never lower himself to anybody. He feels that he is more intelligent, more important, more superior than everybody else. He believes he's superior to the messenger. He certainly believed he was superior to his duchess, and he will believe he's superior to this new wife that's being, set up for him. He has this power about him where he chooses not to lower himself to anybody else's level. So these two figures, Ozymandias the king and the Duke, kind of see themselves as above everybody. They see themselves as superior, and that is proven in the poem with what the poet is choosing to write about. The sneer of cold command, I choose never to stoop. Then I would go into my second paragraph. Okay, I will show you what a paragraph looks like just after this one, after this slide. But I'd go into my second paragraph, and I know that in my second paragraph, I'm going to talk about their arrogance. Very similar. The arrogance of both of these, speakers, or both of the characters that we see in these poems. In Ozymandias, what could I talk about? I always focus in on that King of Kings quotation. On the pedestal below the statue, Ozymandias had the inscription written that he was the King of Kings. Now, that alliteration, that harsh sound is repeated. Cold command, King of Kings. Like repeating this, the harshness, the cutting nature of Ozymandias. But it's also a biblical allusion. We know that in the Bible, Jesus was described constantly as the King of Kings. So if Ozymandias is like, put that on my statue, it shows that Ozymandias has total arrogance. He believes he is like God. He believes people should bow down. He wanted this statue to become almost like a pilgrimage site where people would come and bow down in front of it and cry out in despair because they are not as powerful as him. He believes he's otherworldly. He believes his power is transcendent in terms of like it will last forever, even after his death. He will be better forever and better than anyone on earth. How can I connect this to My Last Duchess and the arrogance that we see? Well, think about in My Last Duchess where the Duke talks about how when his wife married him, his previous one, his last Duchess, she should have been grateful. He talks about how marrying him, taking on his name, his status, was a gift. She should have been bowing down to him. My gift of a 900-year-old name. Just think of the arrogance here. He thought that his wife should have seen this as an honor, that it was a gift bestowed upon her, that what a gift it was to marry into his bloodline. He doesn't consider her at all. He thinks that she should be intensely grateful. And then the last paragraph. In each of my paragraphs, I'm going to connect both of these poems. In my third paragraph, I'm going to talk about, let's look at the statement. Ozymandias has lost his power. The Duke retains his. The Duke holds on to his. Great. I'll start with Ozymandias first. Lost his power. I know that he loses his power because the desert takes over, nature takes over. He believes that he was all powerful, that his statue would last forever, that everyone would go and bow down in front of that statue and cry out in despair. But we know at the end that nothing beside remains. Nature has taken over. There's nothing else around that statue. The statue is completely broken down. Just after that statement, nothing beside remains, we get caesura, a pause, emphasizing the silence around the statue, emphasizing the echo of nothingness around Ozymandias. No one remembers him, no one cares. We also get the description of the lone and level sands that stretch far away. Oh, that should say stretch far away. Listen to the sounds there, lone and level, those long, drawn out L sounds. It's kind of emphasizing the oblivion, the abyss. Ozymandias thought he would rule forever. He doesn't. Nature is the true powerful force. So how would I link that back to the question? Ozymandias believed in his power as a man, but the true power was nature. Nothing beside remains, emphasizing that silence. And on My Last Duchess side, I would talk about the fact that, okay, he is definitely holding on to his power. There is a little bit of loss of control in the middle of the. So you know that the Duke is very much in control. He is very much the one that, you know. is controlling the conversation. He's speaking in monologue. He's, telling the messenger, sit down, look at my wife on the wall. Let's go upstairs. Let's talk about this. Like, he is certainly in control. Now, when he starts talking about his last Duchess and he starts talking about how she, well, he believed in a very paranoid way, he believed that she was, cheating on him and flirting with other men. He does lose control a little bit. In the middle of that poem, the lines start to become a bit more broken down and fragmented. There's a lot of dashes, a lot of caesura, where he's like, somehow, I know not how, but she looked at other men, and he started. Well, I know he doesn't say that, but it starts to become a bit more fragmented in the middle of the poem when he gets angry, but then he reclaims that power at the end, without a doubt. When he starts talking about the fact that his new wife is going to be his object, she will be my object, that's him in control again. And he's in this kind of like endless cycle of arrogance, superiority, and power. We feel, concerned for that new wife at the end. She's going to be treated in the same way. So imagine this is my essay. I start off with the three statements for my thesis, and then I break down those three statements in three comparative paragraphs, round it all off with a conclusion at the end, maybe a couple of lines. Done. I am done. Now, if you're sitting in the exam and you can't remember quotations from the other poem, that's okay. You can reference. So say if we were doing, let's look at the first statement here. Imagine Ozymandias is the one that's, printed on the paper, and you can take sneer of cold command. You could take way more, but sneer of cold command on this side. For My Last Duchess, imagine that you cannot remember the quotation, I choose never to stoop. Fine, you can just talk about how he speaks about the fact that he will not lower himself to her level. You can always remember that. You can remember what happens in the poem. You will still get the same amount of marks as long as you show, as long as you explain what those references show you.